There was there's a story in the Bible where Jesus is teaching. It's real early in the morning. You can maybe picture the still dew on the grass, and it's sun's just coming up over the horizon. And Jesus is there pretty early, and he's teaching in the temple. He's teaching in that part of the temple that anybody can come into, the men or the women, and it's not really that restricted. And while he's teaching there, this mob walks up on him, and they're not really mad at him, or at least not out loud. They're not mad at him. They're dragging this woman with them, and they throw her in front of Jesus, and they say, we caught her in the very act of adultery, and the law is real clear that people like this need to be killed. What do you say? And they don't really care. I want you to kind of put yourself in the place of all the people involved there. The crowd, the mob, they don't really care if he says yes or no on that. If he says yes, kill her, then they'll happily do that. And they'll tell all the people, see, nothing special about Jesus. He talks about mercy and grace and all those things, but when push comes to shove, he's no different than the rest of us. But if he says save her, then they'll probably let her go free, but then they can paint Jesus as somebody who's against the law. It's all a trap for Jesus, and the woman's kind of incidental to it. They don't really care what happens to her. I don't know if you can appreciate, it's one of those stories that we read, if you can appreciate how foreign that is to our experience. Tom Holland is an author and historian. He wrote a lot about the Roman Empire, and that's the time when Jesus is doing all this. He said, as fascinating as the Roman Empire is to him, and he's written, I don't know, half dozen books about it. He says it's just alien to the world that we live in. I mean, it was just such casual cruelty to people who were weak, and you'd see the powerful oppress and think nothing of it, and it was nothing for a king or an important person to kill somebody to make a point. And he said, I'm just glad we live in this time. And Holland, remember, is the one who wrote the book Dominion. He has concluded, and a lot of historians are coming around to this, that really the big difference between that era and this one is the teaching of Jesus. It's hard to appreciate how much he affects every moment that we're awake. Things like free speech and equal rights and even things like democracy and charity. I mean, they all find their root in his teaching. And it wasn't how the world was before Jesus. It was a lot more common to see this sort of thing. In Indiana, the last public execution was in 1930. 3 black 20-year-olds in Marion were arrested, killed a white man and raped his wife or girlfriend, though she later recanted. It was kind of a rush to judgment. But anyway, they grabbed these 3 guys out of the jail there in Marion, and they hung 2 of them. And they took pictures of it. And you can still find pictures of it online. It's not hard to find them, of these black bodies hanging in the tree there in Marion at the courthouse, and white people posing underneath of it. And even something like that. I mean, you know racism still exists in the world. I mean, you know that still goes on. But to see a whole town kind of come unglued like that, and in America, it's just outside of most of our lived experience. We've just not seen something like that happen. It was 1930. But in Jesus' day, to kill somebody, especially to kill somebody weak for violation of the law, it happened a lot. And public executions were common, and to move quickly without a trial was common. And this woman, I'm assuming, figured she was going to die. As they're dragging her away, we don't know much about her before this. We don't know if she was trapped in a bad marriage and was looking for an escape. We don't know if she's just that kind of person. We don't know how they came to catch her at just the right moment, if she was betrayed by her husband who had found out, or if she was betrayed by the guy that she was having the affair with. We just don't know much about any of it. But we could guess pretty accurately that she figures this is the end. And as she's being dragged out there, there's really no hope at all for her surviving this. And Jesus, for his part, pauses when they come and throw her in front of him, and he scribbles on the dirt in the ground, it says. Doesn't tell us what he writes, but he writes some stuff down. Then he hops up and he says, whoever has no sin can throw the first stone. And then he pops back down and he starts writing. And it's a pretty old tradition. It goes back a long, long way that he was writing down the sins of the people holding the rocks. You know, in case they couldn't think of a sin they had done, he was helpfully writing some of that stuff down for them. But whatever the case, they become convicted by this. And it says the oldest ones first and then the youngest ones. toss their rocks down. And finally, it's just Jesus and her. And he says, "Woman, where's your accusers?" And she says, "There's no one." And so he says, "Well, I won't accuse you either, but you really need to make better choices." Now, there's some debate on that story about whether it deserves to be in the Bible. Some of the very oldest Greek copies of Scripture that we have don't have that story in there. And so there's some who say it was added later on. But it pops up really early. And even some guys like Augustine said that it was authentic. It really happened, but that there were worries in the church that if you put a story like that in the Bible, that people might say, "Well, I guess I can do whatever I want then, that he'll just forgive me no matter what." And it's kind of ironic if that was the case, that the early church fathers, some of them were worried the same way the Pharisees were about Jesus' grace message. But I think it should be in there, and I think it's an important story, and I think it's kind of a cornerstone story about how Jesus thinks, how he operates, what kind of guy Jesus is. He doesn't tell her it's no big deal. In fact, literally, he says, you need to leave your life of sin. He's real direct, but he's not going to condemn her to death for that mistake. He gives her a second chance. And I don't know what she did with it. I don't know if she became a follower of Jesus, or if she went back to her husband and never had a second thought about it, or if she went with the guy she's having the affair with, or if she decided to swear off men altogether, that, she wasn't going to let herself get. I don't know. We have no idea what happens to her after this near-death experience. We just know that Jesus gave her a second chance. And I think that's an interesting foundation for what I want to talk about, what kind of guy Jesus was. Because the very next verse in John, that's the verse I really want to focus on today. Jesus, we're in a series of sermons about I am. And then these statements that John made in the book of John where Jesus says, "I am the bread of life." Josh did that last week. Or, "I am the resurrection." We're going to do that on Easter. Or, "the way and the truth and the life." I'm the gate, the shepherd for the sheep. And then today he says, I'm the light. I'm the light of the world. I'm the light of the world. And he's just sent that woman away. He's just told her that she's free to go. He's not going to condemn her. We don't know if she leaves or if she stays. It just says he turns to the crowd. And while all this is on their minds, that play they just saw happen in front of them, he says to the crowd, "I'm the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but they'll have the light of life." And I think every part of this verse is important. So I just wanted to focus real hard on it, and just one verse today. And I think it's a verse worth thinking about, and maybe even meditating on just a little bit. So let's focus on it. The very first part, he says, I'm the light of the world. Now when Jesus is teaching this thing, he's in the temple, and it's during the Feast of Tabernacles. And we have some archaeology, history from that time period, what Jews did to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles in the fall. They would light up the temple with big bowls of oil, and it would light up the whole city. The temple would shine all over the city. And it was supposed to remind people that God is light. That God is, the very first thing he says in the Bible is, "Let there be light." He says, "Let there be light." If you follow the creation song, he says, "Let there be light," before he says, "Let there be a sun and moon and stars," which some guys will say, well, that don't make any sense. But light scripturally is God's vision for the world, God's direction, God's plan. Life according to, you're free. You can do whatever you want to do, but God has a plan for your life. And when you live in tune with that, your life goes the way it's supposed to go. It's light. He will open your eyes. And the very first thing he does is say that there will be light, that there's an option always to turn to God. There's an option always to follow God. He'll be a light to your feet, a lamp to your path. He'll guide you. And the Israelites had a vision, a picture of that when they wandered out of Egypt, the pillar of light in front of them, a cloud and a fire at night that would guide them wherever they're going. And while all that's happening, and all these pictures, these big bowls of oil are burning, Jesus makes all that about him. I'm the light of the world. And it'd be a crazy, arrogant thing to say if it's not true. I mean, you think about any politician you want to think about. And if they started putting this out at the beginning of their speeches, I'm the light of the world. I mean, it's what cult leaders would say. It would drive people away. And yet Jesus says it, and it makes people think. Because he's saying, I'm going to open your eyes. I'm going to show you a different way to live, a different way to think, a different way to be. And it's what the world needs. Light for the world, light of the world. It's what the world is hungry for, even if they don't realize it yet. It's what you're hungry for. There's a way to live. Now, most of our world, certainly in Jesus' time, but even today, far too often, the strong gets away with it. The weak has to pay. The people who have the most power or influence or money seem to be able to do things that the poor or the weaker or the less powerful or influential just can't do. And we all feel that, right? We can feel it in a marriage where the balance of power is not quite where it ought to be, or between parents and children, boss and coworker. We feel it all the time. You know, that there's got to be more to this life than just surviving. You know, there's got to be more to this life than just getting to a certain age with money in my pocket. There's got to be more to it than that. And Jesus says, it's me. It's my way. It's my light. That's what you're missing, and it's for us. I think when he says, I am the light of the world, he's making a reference to God there. Josh talked about this last week. In Exodus, God says, I am who I am. And he says, you tell the Israelites, I am, that which means Yahweh. You tell them, Yahweh, I am, has sent me to you. You tell them, that's my name, Yahweh, I am. And it evokes this idea that God is always present, right? He's not gonna be. It's not he was. He's right here in this moment. He's daily bread. He can get you through what you're going through. He can be light for your eyes and a hope for your heart, and he can do it right now. He's here. And I think when Jesus says, I am the light of the... Sometimes it doesn't mean anything. Like, I am going to the grocery store. It doesn't mean anything. It's always the context. But when Jesus is teaching this passage in John 8, 3 different times, in verse 24 and verse 28, and then at the very end there in verse 59, he will say, I am. And he says it in such a way that there's no noun after. Like, he's just wanting them to know it's me. I'm speaking in God's name. I'm speaking for God. And at some level, I'm speaking as God. At the end, when he makes it completely blatant there in verse 58 and 59, the same mob that brought that woman pick up stones to throw at Jesus. Right? The same rocks they had dropped for this woman, they pick them back up to throw at Jesus because they can see what he's saying. He's claiming something about himself, that if you wondered what God is like, if you wonder who God is like and how God feels, just look to me, he says. I'm the light of the world. And I wonder how everybody... Again, think about that woman caught in adultery, who's just had her second lease on life. This is the very next thing he says. I'm the light of the world. It's me. I don't know if she even understood it completely then. He says, the second part, whoever follows me, he says, I'm the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness. Now, you could read it like a command. Like, if you want to follow me, then you better quit walking in darkness. You could read it like that. And I'm not sure that's wrong. That might be a good way to read it. But it seems more likely what he's saying is if you make a decision to put me first, then the darkness is going to become a thing of your past. You're going to walk out of that. It will naturally follow. And he's talking about a lot of things here with darkness. I mean, certainly he's talking about sin. And a lot of us keep real tight hold of our sin. In fact, sin thrives in the darkness. It does better when nobody knows. Sometimes a politician will get in trouble in Washington, and the reporters will say, it's not the original crime that gets them, it's the cover-up. The cover-up's what's going to get them. Like studying on Watergate or something like that. It wasn't the crime, it's the cover-up that gets you. And they'll always say it like it's this huge a flaw of character. I can't believe when they were caught, they just didn't admit it. But that particular flaw of character is universal. Most of us have a really hard time admitting anything we do wrong. Some of you might be sitting beside somebody today who has never apologized for anything in their entire life. It's just never popped up. They never think they're wrong. And even if they do think they're wrong, they don't admit it. We have a way of wanting to keep that kind of close. Most people don't realize that they have sin, not big sin. If I were to say, are you a sinner, you'd say sure. But in terms of like big sin, consequential sin, a lot of times we don't see our sin. And I've talked about this before, and I know this is old hat a little bit, but like you have a circle of 10 people, and one person's gossiping too much. They're telling things about people they shouldn't be telling, and it's making everybody else uncomfortable. 10 people in the circle. Who's the only one who doesn't know who the bad person is? It's the gossip, right? Or one person's talking too much. Or one person's bragging too much about themselves. And you don't even see it. Everybody else sees it real clear, but you have no idea. Because sin works best when it's hidden, it's dark. You don't really notice that it's there. A couple of months ago, I had to have an eye surgery, and when my eyes first had problem, my retina tore in the back of one of my eyes, and it was like this cloud came over my vision. Hope that you don't have to go through that, any of you, but a cloud goes through your vision, and you're kind of partially blind, and you just can't see things, and it's all of a sudden, it's real fast. And when you can't see, you're kind of stumbling around, and you don't know if you're ever going to get better. And Jesus says, if you'll follow me, you'll come out of that. I had a friend who drank too much, and he decided, and his family decided enough was enough. He needed to get sober. It was too much. And so at first he really tried, and his family was really trying to help him, and his wife was really getting on him all the time about the drinking, but he really wanted to drink. So he would start hiding it in the house. And when she'd find it, they'd make a big deal about it. I can't believe you hid this, and he'd apologize, but there was still alcohol hidden 10 other places in the house. And they went on like that for years. And him just hiding stuff from her, and her trying all the time to see what's going on. I've known more than one guy through the years who's scared to leave his phone where somebody could find it. And if he is going to leave his phone where they can find it, he makes sure to clear his search history before anybody takes a look at it. Doesn't want anybody to know what he's been looking at. If I can just keep it hidden, then nobody will know. And the cover-up, of course, is always worse than the crime. It reveals something real bad about us. Jesus talks about this in a different place. He says, this is the verdict. Light came into the world, but people chose the darkness. They liked doing what they were doing. They didn't want to give it up. I was reading a book by Steve Cuss. He was talking about anxiety and worry and the fear that comes from that. And that's always interesting reading to me because I've struggled with that at different times. Anxiety really got a hold of me and really got stressed out about some of those kind of things. And I'm reading this book, and in the middle of it, he's doing 2 or 3 different angles at it, looking at it. But in the middle of his teaching, he says, one thing that's positive about anxiety is it can be an alarm to let you know where your idols are. And what he means is, like, if I'm just scared to death that my reputation, what are they going to think of me? What are they going to think of me? I'm just constantly worried. Well, maybe my idol is my reputation. I'm just not resting in God. Or if I'm just constantly worried that about my money, it's going to run out, or my health, or how things are going at work, or my family, I'm just constantly stressed and worried and anxious. Well, maybe I've made that thing a little too important. And Steve Cuss, that's the author, he says, well, I need to focus, he says, on God. And as I focus on God, then those worries will have to become a little smaller. As I'm focusing on, they may not go away, but at least they're manageable because my focus is on the most important thing. And I think that's kind of what Jesus is getting at here. He says, whoever follows me won't walk in the darkness. They won't go that direction anymore. They'll lean on me. They'll trust me. They'll put their hope in me. Sometimes when somebody comes to me, and they're real anxious or worried or stressed, I've learned through the years to be real gentle about that And mostly because, again, when I was dealing with it, sometimes people would say, well, I'd say, I'm just worried all the time. And they'd say, well, quit that. Well, great, that's what I'll do. I'll just quit it. And it was so hard, I couldn't do it, right? It didn't help me at all. So and so I found that when people got to me, that I often, kind of like a Mr. Rogers thing. Yeah, oh, you got this. You're awesome. Don't feel bad. You're fine. You'll be okay, and you're doing the right things. I just don't understand. And just keep being you. You'll be fine. And what I found in my own life, for me, is I didn't really need that. It felt good. I didn't really need that. What I needed was more of a William Wallace kind of a thing. I needed somebody to get in my ear and say, we are going to take the field. We absolutely are going to do this because this is the right thing to do. And if we die today, then we die today. But we're going to live like we're supposed to live. And I almost need that. What I find when I'm really knocked down is I don't need comfort. I need courage. And I think I find my courage in faith when I focus on Christ. So, going back to the whole thing, he says, I'm the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And when I was studying that this week, that word have kind of struck me there, kind of knocked me backwards. If I'll follow him, then I have it. I have him as my possession. I have him as my brother, my partner, my king. I have that. And at some level, as I let that light infect me, yesterday was such a great day. We were outside. I don't know if you got to go outside yesterday at all. But a couple of guys that I knew from the church had kids, and they brought their kids to the playground yesterday, and I walked over and was hanging out with those guys for a while, and we're talking, and the sun's shining. And the kids are wandering in the playground over there across the road, and they're riding their bikes in the parking lot, and the sun's shining, and then they all kind of float into the playground. And at first, kind of instinctively, we followed them, right? We kind of walked to the shelter house there so we could see them better. And then it's like, well, I don't want to go in the shelter house. The sun feels good. I want to be out in the sun. And I know when the summer comes and it's just blistering on us, we'll be thankful for that shade. But this time of year where you've just had all that gray weather and the snow and the cold, and it just feels good to be in the sun. There's something about being in the sun that kind of brightens you up. Just being outside in it makes you feel better. And when I allow his light to shine on me, there's something similar that goes on. I have the light of life. It transforms me. And we know in Hebrews that he's the exact reflection of God, but when I come close to him, he says, you'll be the light of the world. So he calls himself light of the world. But he says, you also are the light of the world, and your light needs to shine. The world needs to see it. I had somebody, I actually had two different conversations this week. Two different people came to me, and they're trying to invite one of their friends to maybe come to church and to hear some of this stuff and to be part of it. And they're both having some trouble doing it. Who am I to say, I'm just scared I'm going to do it wrong, or I'm just scared I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I'm scared I'm going to blow it, or I'm going to mess it up, or they won't want to. And man, just do it. It's again that William Wallace thing. And I'm tempted to be like Mr. Just be you, you'll be fine. And that's what people are here to hear. We don't really need comfort in those things. We just need to be pushed to do what we know we need to do. And as you are pushed to that, well, then you become something different too. You have his light. And there will be people in your orbit who will decide what they're going to think about God based on you. For better or for worse. Right? There are people in your orbit who absolutely will decide what they're going to do about God because of you. And so it pushes this thing on us, because I certainly want to shine for the ones who need him. And I guess everybody needs him, but I'm thinking especially about the ones who are getting beat up by the world. And again, it takes me back to that very first thing we talked about, the woman caught in adultery, and the person who's made several bad choices in a row, and now they're exposed, and now they're caught, and they're afraid that this one mistake is just going to wreck them, and Jesus gives them a second chance. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that that's always how God operates. I read a story this week. We were going through a Bible story, and we read about Rahab in the Old Testament. And I don't know if you guys are passingly familiar with Rahab's story or not, but just bear with me for a second. And Rahab is Jericho. Remember, the walls come falling down at Jericho, and Rahab lives in Jericho. And she's a prostitute, and she kind of runs a house of prostitution. So she's managing other prostitutes, kind of a successful businesswoman in this area. And the Israelites have come through, and they're camped right outside Jericho. And Joshua, the commander of the Israelites, says, let's send 2 spies in to Jericho and spy things out. But it really blows up. I mean, they're almost immediately exposed. People know they're there. And they go to Rahab, hopefully just to hide. Maybe they were at Rahab's for a different reason, but I think they go just to hide. And she hides them. The king's men come say, hey, we know you got some guys here who are Israelites. And she said, well, they were here, but they left. And so you need to go chase them. So they leave. And she tells the Israelite, the 2 spies, she says, we know who you are. We know who God is. We've seen the things that God has done. We've seen how God has brought you through the desert. We've heard about the Egyptians. We've heard about the Red Sea. We've heard about all these things. The whole city, she says, is melting in fear because of you. But nobody's moving towards you. But she says, I want to move towards you. And so I'll save you, she says. I won't tell anybody you're here, but then you need to save me. I want to be on your team. I want to be with you. I can see where God is, and I want to be on that side. And the spies agree to it. Sure, your life, our lives for yours. And if you'll save us, then we'll certainly make sure that you're safe too. And when the walls do come down, when the Jericho, when that whole thing happens, Joshua, the commander, says, go save Rahab. Go get her and save her. And she eventually marries somebody in Israel. That she leaves the old life behind. She marries somebody in Israel. And it mentions in the genealogy, she's like the great-great-great-grandmother of David and like the 20 great-grandmothers of Jesus. I mean, she's in the line. I mean, she becomes an important Israelite. She's mentioned in Hebrews 11 as one of the great women of faith in the whole Bible, that she saw God. And she made the hard decision to turn to God even if no one else in her city was going to. And no one else in her city did. Just her and her family, and that's who was saved. And I read the story, and I've read it before. It's a really kind of a William Wallace story too, kind of inspiring. And I like those Bible stories a lot. But what caught me this week that I'd never really thought about is, why does God send spies in there anyway? They don't really accomplish anything. And he doesn't need to know where the weak spots are. He's going to bring the walls down. God doesn't need to know where the best soldiers are. He's going to tear the walls down. It won't matter where the best soldiers are. I mean, there's no reason to send the spies in. And then it kind of struck me, I think he sends them to get Rahab. I think it's the only reason why he sends them in there. I think God always does stuff like that, all the way through Scripture. And here's a woman who's a prostitute and a manager of prostitutes. She's far, far, far from God. She's never went to any sort of a religious observance that would honor God at all, but she's thinking it. Her mind is already turning to God, and so God goes and gets her. It was really kind of hit me this week, because I'm convinced when I think back about my life that God came and got me. That I was backward and awkward and lonely teenager, and God put the right friend in my path, and I got to hear about this thing and turn my whole life around. I'm still backward and awkward, but the rest of it turned right around. And God brought me through that thing. And I didn't know that he was moving, but when I made the decision, I could see all the dominoes that fell that got me to be in that place at that time when finally my eyes would be open and I could see it. And I think he did that with Rahab. And I think he did that with that woman caught in adultery. This whole world is spinning one direction, but you don't have to go that way. That path is wide, and there's a lot of people on it. But you can turn back to God. And he'll illuminate everything. And he'll change your mind. And it'd be my great hope that anybody out here who is hungry for that would grab a hold of it today. And we'll have people in the front who will pray with you. And if anybody needs prayer to get themselves close to God about anything, man, take advantage. Let me pray with you. Dear Lord God, I thank you for this group. And God, I don't know how many dominoes fell to get them here today. But I know, God, for sure that there's people in here who maybe hide their liquor or clear their search history. I know there's people in here, God, who probably are glad that people around them don't know exactly who they are. I know, God, how easy it is to hide in the darkness. So I just pray, God, right now that if there's anybody here that needs to come draw close to you, that you open their eyes, that you let them see how easy it is to turn around, and that, God, you clean their heart. And I thank you, God, for that promise. It's never went away, that if I turn and start following you, that you'll straighten my path out. You'll help me to see the right ways to go. You'll change my heart, and I'm still hungry for that. And I pray for anybody out here who's hungry for that too, God, that you draw them close. In Christ's name, amen. Won't you stand up?